Today, I am diving into one of the major pillars of a strong, freedom-filled culture, and that's strong families. And of course, strong families are based on strong marriages. So today, I'm joined by a special guest, Dr. Mike Frazier, who's made it his mission to help strengthen his this wonderful foundation by helping particularly men of faith build stronger and more enduring marriages. He's the host of the podcast Strong Men, Strong Marriages. He is a fellow patriot, and I'm so excited to dive into this very important topic with him that is guaranteed to be life transforming for you. So welcome, Dr. Mike Frazier. It's so great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And you guys, make sure you click on the link below. And Dr. Mike is going to be having a free webinar on October 20th, 1 p.m. Eastern, to dive even deeper into the things we're talking about today. You're not going to want to miss that. All right. So, I like to ask, just give us a bit of your backstory. How did you end up becoming so passionate about helping men achieve strong marriages?
Yeah, so great question. The personal side of it was just my own marriage had problems. We looked pretty good from the outside. A lot of people at church, they'd be like, "Oh, like we want to be like you guys. We want to be like your family." But inside, like, at least I was very frustrated with how things were going. Mainly the physical intimacy piece. It wasn't really there in our marriage. And, I felt like I was doing everything that a good husband should do, right? Like, I read the 5 love languages. I'm like, okay, well, right, let me make sure I do all of those for my wife. I'm checking all those. I'm washing dishes. I'm changing diapers, right? Doing all this stuff. But for some reason, it wasn't translated into her being attracted to me, at least in a sexual way, right? Now, on a personal side too, like she did have pretty bad abuse growing up. And so, that added a layer of difficulty to things. And we like to blame that, like we kind of blame that for everything. But what I came to find out was the way I was really thinking about intimacy in particular, but just our marriage kind of overall was actually more of the problem. Just how I thought I was kind of, the savior and like saving her and, just really kind of a superior mindset is what I was taking into it. That was really unattractive to her, feeling like sex was owed to me. So all of that, like we had to see our own marriage coach, and she helped me see that side of it more. And yeah, I just kind of was able to own that side of it more. And now I help guys do the same. My relationship with my wife now is way better now that I've caught those kind of problematic patterns. And so I can kind of see them in other guys too, and we can make those corrections.
That's wonderful. What do you see as, what's the link do you see between, say, healthy marriages and a healthy society, a healthy culture, and by contrast, dysfunctional marriages, dysfunctional families, and a dysfunctional culture? Can you tease that out a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the foundation, right? Like, where you, as a child, you grow up with your parents teaching you certain values, also demonstrating like a certain way that they interact with each other that really models, how you're going to treat, if you're a guy, how you're going to treat women, if you're a woman, how you're going to treat men, but also just, what kind of respect you're going to treat other adults as you go forward. So yeah, like for me, like our mission in Strong Men, Strong Marriages, what I believe is, we want to be strong and loving leaders of our homes, patriots, as you put it, like, and following Christ is our example in that. A lot of times we get mixed up with like, what does it mean to be a leader in the home? What's a strong man look like? We kind of have not great examples out there of that. I know you're not a Disney fan like me neither. Like all the Disney dads that you look at, they're just kind of losers. Right? I mean, they're just kind of,
I don't like them. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they're just kind of like idiots, right? You look at them, they're getting run over by their wife all day. And,
right.
it's just not a good example. So like for us, what we're trying to be is following Christ, be strong and loving leaders of our homes, examples of real manhood to ourselves, our families, and the world, and creating a better world through stronger families. I mean, that's where you're learning these principles. That's where you're learning how do you treat others, how do you live a
Right.
Christian life of
Right.
morality and integrity, right? And then, to me, the big goal is that helps us really prepare the world for the second coming as we are demonstrating that. And then it grows out, right? Like if you can set that example, then your kids are following that, grandkids, and so on.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I once heard it put, the family is the only institution where we learn that we are obligated to people and places and beliefs and practices that we didn't personally choose ourselves, but that chose us. And therefore, there's a sense of there's a sense of gratitude that comes out of that, and then from there, a sense of obligation. And it seems like we're living in a time where all of that has been replaced by resentment and hatred, and jealousies, and the like. I think of Meghan Markle, and the way she was able to just, even Harry has responsibility here too, right? But the way they were just able to throw away their familial obligations. Who cares? We don't need it. We're going to live life our own way. I'm just thinking, if their parents had that same attitude, they probably wouldn't exist today.
Yeah, that's true.
That it really is the family. When we say it's the foundation of society, I mean, there it is, right there.
Totally.
There's that classic saying, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So it's cyclical. Where do you see men right now?
So, I mean, I like your approach that like it's a resurgence of Christianity. I think that, we've had a time where, we did have the easy times, right? And I think even like the examples that we see out there are sort of, but to call it weak men, it's probably accurate in some ways. And I like to think about strength across different areas, like spiritual strength. Definitely that's been eroded, and I think that's the foundation, right? So you start trying to pull that out, and now the rest of it doesn't work that well. Mental strength, emotional strength, we don't really get taught those things very well, especially as men often. And then sexual strength, like God gave us sexuality, but what we see out in the world is just like use it however you want. There's no real accountability around that. Just use protection, whatever, right? Versus having it be, hey, like this is how I want to really connect with a daughter of God, right? This is who I want to share my life with, my everything with. That's what sex is meant to be, but we don't really. That's not modeled for us out there very well. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I think it's been eroded. I agree with you. It's been like intentionally eroded, especially spiritual and sexual strength are big targets of the adversary. And so yeah, we've seen a weakening, but I think people are starting to experience the negative results of that and looking for to build strength and to look for solutions.
Absolutely. And gang, if you're just joining us, Mike is going to be doing a webinar on October 20th. So if you click on the link below, it's a free webinar, 1 p.m. Eastern. Check it out. It's going to be awesome. I'll be there with Mike as well, and learning about how to strengthen our marriages, strengthening our families, and therefore strengthening our culture of faith, family, and freedom. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I forget the book. I think it's The Modern World and Sexuality. I think Anthony Giddens. He's a globalist scholar. But one of the things he observed is that modern sexual practices are very different from older generation ones, in that prior to modern contraception, there was always a sense that sex did involve obligation. Not that everybody lived that way, but the social norms were there. If you weren't living that way, you were avant-garde, you were strange, or you were one of ill character. Well, today now that any kind of obligation has been split because the connection between sex and procreation has been severed. Again, due to modern birth control and contraception and the like, and of course, abortion and all. So we tend to see sex now as recreational. And that doesn't seem to be the way we were made. That's not reflective of what makes us truly human. What are you seeing in some of the biggest common problems in the men that you help?
Yeah, so I mean, pornography is a big one. And so, the other thing, so for one reason or another, right? So it kind of breaks down into three kind of main problems guys will come look for help from me with. One is, their marriage kind of seems okay, but the sex is not there, and they can't seem to figure out why. And that's kind of where I was at and what I help guys more with. And a lot of times I'll turn to pornography as kind of like a release from that. The other one is infidelity on one side or the other, either him or her, right? Either emotional infidelity or sexual infidelity. And then kind of at the end of the line there, guys will come if they are looking at a separation, near a divorce, kind of looking through that. And so what I see is, it's, again, like the way you're thinking, feeling, and acting, that's the problem. And once you adjust that, you can become much more attractive to your wife. Like what you're doing as a guy is either going to be attractive or not. And, as Christian guys, we can understand, like if our behaviors, if our thoughts, feelings, and actions are aligned with how God wants us to be acting, how Christ wants us to be acting, like we're in a pretty good spot. The trick is sometimes we think we are when we're not, and that's what gets kind of unattractive.
Yeah, that's right. Well, then that's where some objective set of eyes like yours comes in, doesn't it?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
on that,
please, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, just on that separation side too. Like sometimes it's obvious what's caused it, but like in an affair or something, it's, pretty clear how you put yourself in that situation. But a lot of times with people who've been married, 20, 30 years, the wife just kind of gets feels not prioritized long term, and eventually she just kind of gets tired of that. And that's that can happen. But you can't overcome it, right? You have to really shift things around. But that's another kind of common cause I've seen.
Yeah, relationships are very complex because we're very complex, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. You have a podcast where you dive more into this topic. You give very practical advice for men looking to strengthen their marriage. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's called Strong Men, Strong Marriages, kind of like we're talking about here. As a man, we want to be a leader in our household, right? And so, when we build up strengths, and I like to talk about, like I said, those different strengths: spiritual strength, being a man of integrity, being aligned with what you really believe, living true to that, having a mission and purpose that you're working towards. Really, if you can just nail those ones down, like that spiritual strength, you're in a pretty good spot. Then we talk about mental strength. Like, so my training, I'm a psychiatrist, went to medical school, psychiatry residency after that, did a lot of training in therapy through that. After that, learned a lot of coaching tools. So that's where, we apply all those things. Sometimes Christian folks, they can be understandably concerned about kind of modern psychological practice or tools. So for me, right, I just pull in like what is backed up. So my bachelor's was in neuroscience, like what actually works for your brain, like what actually helps make the shifts, like how does your brain change? Like I like to think of what I do as rewiring people's brains. So we just work on that and how that works.
So fascinating. Yeah, it's very fascinating, which you've just brought that up, sort of the synthesis between the ancient wisdom that you're bringing in with modern science, because that seems to be, in terms of a number of studies on it, it seems to be that's the That's the trends now. The one theory is calling it archaeofuturism. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. As it were, it's interfacing the best of both worlds. Is that what you're seeing? Are you seeing that in? Well, obviously that's the way you're seeing what you're doing. But do you see that in psychiatry as a whole? Do you see psychiatry moving away from the very kind of atheistic Freudian paradigm to something a bit more human?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. Like I said, I trained in psychiatry. Went through a residency program and all that. These days, psychiatry, if you're not very like proactive about creating your own practice and business, where you're going to go is you're going to go into a big system that you're just prescribing medication. Like that's basically where it goes. Now, some people like myself will kind of not really like that. And,
Right.
kind of like for me, and I think for a lot of psychiatrists, right? You go in there because you want to help someone live a better life. That was what I was about, and I felt like I'd learned a lot of tools to do that through that training. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the healthcare system, what they're trying to do is minimize costs, and so a psychiatrist training is like their dollars per hour. They're gonna have to pay them more, and so they try to shorten visits, make it just medication, and then they farm the therapy out to someone that won't cost as much to do it.
Yeah.
Is basically how that system is structured right now. But like people I work with and like the partners I've worked with, they are very much into what you're talking about, trying to integrate, the connection with God and connection with spirituality. And I think just overall, there is kind of now a sense of that like you need purpose and you need connection, to something bigger than yourself to really feel fulfilled. It's like Viktor Frankl, logotherapy. You need purpose, you need contribution, and yeah. The best place to get that, in my opinion, right, is through Christ. I do work with guys that don't believe in Christ, but I really try to get the point across that if you don't have that, especially like your sense of self-worth, right? If you don't have God or something bigger than yourself, you're trying to borrow it from other places, especially your wife, right? You're trying to get attention, appreciation, affection from her because you can't feel it on your own or from God, right? And then she gets kind of drained. I call it the mosquito cycle, right? You're trying to suck off attention, appreciation, affection, sex from her, and she gets sick of it over time.
Wow, there you go. There you go. Excellent. Yeah, I guess probably the best example right now of sort of an archaeofuturist project would be someone like Jordan Peterson in psychology. You've got to have the maps of meaning. You've got to be tapping into these ancient, eternal forms of wisdom. I know he gets into the whole Jungian kind of interpretation. Say, we'll slap him out of that at some point. But it's very good. It's very helpful. It's really fascinating that the person who is speaking most clearly, it seems to me, biblical truths right now is a Canadian psychologist to a society that's just been so inundated with scientific rationalism is the one true way of understanding things, but have pushed that to its end. It's like the book entitled Exhausting Modernity. They've gone as far as they can go, and now they're hitting all of these problems you're talking about here in their personal relationships. So speaking of then, there's probably a man listening right now that's wanting to get, they feel like you're talking to them directly. They want to get more plugged into your advice, get more plugged in to your work. They have some questions for you. What are the next steps to learning more about you and this very, very valuable work?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I appreciate that. So the podcast, Strong Men, Strong Marriages, is a great place to start. I recommend starting with the first 4 episodes. They'll kind of give you the introduction of kind of the way that I think about things and how marriage works and some of the common problems. And then from there, you can head over to strongmenstrongmarriages.com. There's a website there, and you can click on Work with Me. That'll let you fill out an application to, and we'll get on a call and see if we're a good fit to work together. There's also an email series there if you want to start with that. Then, of course, the webinar that we're doing is going to be a really great way to learn a little bit more and see more about how I work with guys.
Yeah, can you give us just a little taste, a little appetizer for what we can expect at the webinar?
Yeah, for sure. So, the way that I look at it, right, is for a guy, right, when he's seeing his wife pull away, right, whether that's just sexually, whether that's mentally, emotionally, whether that's physically, right, what's happening is you have lost attraction, right? Your wife's not attracted to you at this point. And so our goal is to, and this is what we're going to talk about, we're going to figure out, like, what are the big turnoffs for your wife? Like, what are you doing that's repelling her? What are you doing that's unattractive? Some of the more common things that men do that I've seen lots of times, did myself too, right? So we identify those negative patterns, right? Then we're going to identify, okay, what are like some of the most attractive things you can start doing? What do women really find attractive, right? And, Christian women in particular are looking for, certain traits in their guy, right? To feel like, hey, like, this is the guy I want to spend my life with, right? Be the father of my children and all of that. So we're gonna talk about the negative things you're doing. We're gonna talk about good, positive, attractive things that you can do. And then we're gonna talk about just, how do you develop those? What are the steps that you take to really become that strong, attractive, Christ-like man that has all those strengths, right? We're going to talk about too, kind of 3 pillars you need to build. So, you build those strengths, but also to build a marriage, you need trust, right? You need communication. You need to be good at that. Understanding her, expressing yourself well, getting to win-win agreements. And then the intimacy, right? The passion, the connection that's special about marriage.
Awesome. Can't wait. Guys, you got to click on that link below right now. October 20th. Webinar, free, absolutely free, with Dr. Mike Frazier. This is, again, as you could hear it, this is life-changing, not just for yourself, but for your spouse as well. Dr. Mike, I could talk to you for another couple of hours. This is great. I love it. Again, it's what you're doing here is you're maintaining the health and restoring the health and the foundation of culture and society. So you are right at the front lines, and I can't thank you enough for your work, and I very much looking forward to the webinar.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. God bless.